Newspaper headlines the day after Forrest Hall III was killed portrayed his death as just another murder. A young black man stabbed once in the neck during an altercation on a street corner in Lynn. He bled to death moments later. It wasn't until the victim's father, Forrest Hall Jr., spoke out about the circumstances involved in his son's death that it became apparent that there was more to this incident than was initially reported.
From the time my son was in that yard, in that parking lot, Lynn Hospital, and from the time till the time that the ambulance came, okay, my son was already dead. And in between that time, this kid was knocking, saying, call somebody, call the ambulance, call the police. And you know, when they did arrive, it was just too late. Or when the security guards reacted to the situation, it was too damn late.
It was about 12 o'clock at night. Just beyond that traffic light, Forrest Hall, a young, healthy 26-year-old man, was stabbed with a knife during a fight. He knew where Lynn Hospital was. He was born here. So he began to run toward the hospital, the 3-block distance. And within a matter of minutes, he was on his way to the front door. With his hand grasping his neck, Hall got to about this point and collapsed where this car is now sitting. He was only a few feet away from this admitting area. A friend who was with him then ran to the front door of the hospital, banged on the window with blood all over his shirt, and tried to get someone to come and help them. Several minutes passed, but an ambulance finally did arrive from the opposite side of the hospital. By this time, Hall had moved from this spot over to here, a few feet closer to the front door of the hospital. But he died in his friend's arms, not knowing that the emergency room, which he had thought was open, had closed months ago. Forrest Hall III was officially declared dead at Lynn's other hospital, Union Hospital, shortly after midnight, January 10th. He was taken by ambulance to Union Hospital because Lynn Hospital, the city's oldest and most centrally located medical facility, no longer has an emergency room. It no longer has operating rooms. The staff here cannot service a life-threatening injury. In short, Lynn Hospital is a shell of what it was 3 years ago when the Atlanticare Medical Corporation began cutting services to save money.
What we did is we consolidated all acute care services in the city of Lynn into one hospital. Lynn could not support 2 total hospitals. We had 2 hospitals in Lynn. They had emergency rooms, they had operating suites, they had intensive care units. There were not enough people to support 2 hospitals. Those 2 hospitals therefore consolidated, merged into one. The question then was, of the 2 facilities, which is the better to use as your acute care facility? It was determined that the better of the 2 was up the street at Union Hospital because of the condition of the building, okay? That's the question that we had to face here in the city of Lynn.
Common sense tells me, and I'm not a specialist in the medical field, but common sense tells me that if they can only afford 1 full-time emergency unit, then it should be centrally located, where it's most easily accessible to the citizens that they're supposed to have a commitment to. And quite frankly, I question that commitment.
The death of Forrest Hall III was City Councilor James Cowdell's worst nightmare. Cowdell grew up and now represents the working-class neighborhood where Lynn Hospital is located. And he opposed the cost-cutting Atlanticare plan, which transformed Lynn Hospital into a walk-in clinic while concentrating the city's major medical services at Union Hospital, 3 miles further from the center of town.
We're being held responsible for Atlanticare's past poor management decisions. I mean, I could go on and on about their poor management, but not too long ago, I think it was 3 years ago, they spent almost $3 million on rehabbing Lynn Hospital, the Boston Street Hospital, and they said that's going to be our main hospital. Now here it is 3 years later, they're going back to Linfield Street saying, no, this is going to be our main hospital. And the simple reason, and they won't tell you this, but the reason why they're doing it is they want to try to attract the clientele from Linfield, from Peabody and the more affluent surrounding cities, and get away from what they would call the tough clients from downtown Lynn. And my whole stand on this is those are the people that need the hospital.
Dollars and cents. Will people be able to pay for it? Isn't that the real question?
That's a major question, sure. That's a major question.
Isn't that really what's driving whether or not these hospitals stay open and where you put
The thing that's driving when
Your
the
attention?
hospitals stay open is whether or not you have a patient volume remaining overnight. If you do not, then you don't have the income to meet your payrolls, to buy new equipment or anything else.
For me talking to different people, a lot of folks really didn't know that Lynn Hospital had completely closed down. That live in Lynn.
People who had gone to the funeral and the wake?
Yes.
Friends that you knew
Exactly.
growing up
That's right.
who live around Lynn
Yes.
now didn't know that there was no emergency care there?
That's right. They, you know, no one knew. It was just done. My son passed away, and it was needlessly that he passed away. And if that hospital was there today, my son would have been alive today.
As the war overseas intensifies, so does the life and death struggle of people like Forrest Hall, a victim of tragic circumstances, no doubt compounded by the escalating cost of health care, which is making life increasingly difficult and, in this case, fatal for those at the bottom of the economic ladder. For the 10 o'clock news, I'm Marcus Jones.